The next thing we'll need to do in our project is create our variables, which are ways to store and remember information that we can then use throughout our app. In total, we need 7 variables. 4 of these are for the 4 possible recommendations that you'll provide to the user. For example, if I'm trying to recommend a career, my 4 variables might be engineer, teacher, artist, and firefighter. I'll also need 3 variables to store the answers to the questions that you ask the user. For example, one of my questions might be, what's your favorite class? And so I'll create the variable faveclass to store whatever the user tells me. Let's go over to code.org to see how this works. First thing, make sure you're in code mode so we can write the actual code. You'll also want to go to the variables part of your toolbox, since that's primarily what we'll be doing. Now we can look at our workspace and see there's already a place in the template to write our variables and little reminders for how to do that. So let's start by creating 4 variables for the 4 possible recommendations. We're just going to use the very first block at the top of our toolbox. Declaring a variable is just another way of saying creating a variable. So anytime you see that var for var, that means that you're creating a whole new original variable in your program. Once again, I'll give this a name like engineer and a starting value of 0, because so far engineers have 0 points. I'm going to do the same for my other possible recommendations. For example, var teacher also starts at 0, as would var artist and var firefighter, all starting off at 0 points. Next, I'm going to create 3 variables to store the user's answers. We already know that one of my questions is going to be what's their fave class. I'll name that fave class. And the starting value, I don't really know yet because the user hasn't told me. So I'm just going to give it a starting value, kind of 2 quotation marks. In other words, a blank empty string. And we'll worry about filling that in later. I can then go ahead and create 2 more variables for my other 2 questions. I might want to know what someone's preferred income is in order to recommend them a job. Or I also want to know what their personality is like. Maybe they're a people person, or maybe they'd like to work on their own. Or maybe they're really creative and they'd appreciate a more creative career. So here we can see my 4 variables for my 4 outcomes, as well as my 3 variables for the user's 3 answers. The biggest thing to remember when creating your variables is first, use the word var if you're creating it for the first time. Secondly, give them really descriptive names so that when you refer to them later, you know exactly what information they contain. And that's that. See you in the next one.